There is a quiet power in becoming unreachable, not cold, not arrogant, but untouchable in the most graceful, grounded sense. When people no longer have access to your emotional buttons, when their words don't provoke you, when their absence doesn't unbalance you, and their approval no longer feeds you, you become something rare, free. Most people live on the emotional leash of the world. One message changes their mood. One subtle rejection ruins their day. One argument sends them into spiral. Why? Because they've never built boundaries between what happens and how they feel. They are emotionally available to everyone. And that is dangerous. You weren't meant to be on call for the world's energy. Not every vibration deserves your attention. Not every voice deserves your response. But somewhere along the way, we were conditioned to believe that being accessible is virtuous, that replying fast is respectful, that always explaining yourself is maturity. No. Sometimes, true respect is silence. Sometimes, maturity is not defending your position. And sometimes, the greatest power move is walking away, with no need to be understood. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But that understanding doesn't require you to keep absorbing the chaos. To understand is not to indulge. To see clearly is not to stay close. When you detach from the noise, something incredible happens. You begin to conserve your energy. You realize that attention is currency, and you were giving it away like loose change. Your silence becomes your sword, your stillness becomes your shield, and your distance, that sacred space between you and the emotional chaos of others, becomes a throne. You don't owe anyone your presence, especially when their presence drains your peace. Let's be real. How often have you responded just to avoid being misunderstood? How often have you explained yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you? How often have you performed clarity while they clung to confusion? The truth is, people who want to see you will. Those who don't, won't. No amount of proof, kindness, vulnerability, or effort will make them understand what they are not ready to receive. So stop handing out pieces of yourself in the name of validation. Stop offering your mind as a battleground for people who only seek to win, not understand. Becoming unreachable is not about hiding. It's about choosing. Choosing where your energy goes. Choosing who gets access to your nervous system. Choosing when you show up and when you disappear. You see, emotional availability is not a virtue when it's indiscriminate. It's a leak. It's how you lose yourself in the name of being nice, open, or real. But there's nothing more real than refusing to be used, nothing more open than creating sacred space for yourself, and nothing more powerful than knowing how to stay still when the world tries to pull you into noise. You don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to be always reachable. You don't have to be emotionally on demand. You are not a product. You are not a button to be pushed. You are not a code to be cracked. You are a sovereign mind, a conscious presence, and your energy is not free for all. That is not cruelty. That is clarity, and from that clarity, you build a presence that cannot be manipulated, guilted, or owned. A presence that walks into a room and doesn't beg to be seen. It is felt, not because you shouted, but because you stopped performing. When you stop showing up for everyone, something strange happens. People start wondering where you went. The same people who ignored your presence begin to feel your absence. Why? Because silence forces reflection. Because emotional distance reveals imbalance. And because your energy, when no longer given freely, becomes sacred. You were never meant to explain yourself to everyone. You were never meant to be available on every platform, every minute, every time someone else wanted access to your peace. Let them wonder. Let them feel the weight of your absence. Let them sit in the echo of their own noise without your energy to soften it. This is not revenge. This is realignment. When you become unreachable, the world can no longer pull you into battles that don't deserve your presence. You no longer bleed for causes that insult your spirit. You no longer react to provocations that once controlled your mood. You've exited the arena. You've stopped dancing for approval. You've remembered your worth. And the beauty is, this isn't about pride or power. It's about peace. The less you react, the more you see. The more you observe, the less you absorb. And the less you absorb, the more free you become. Freedom isn't found in doing everything. It's found in choosing what not to do. You don't respond to every message. You don't accept every invitation. You don't validate every false narrative spoken about you. You let them speak. You let them assume. You let them twist your silence into whatever story comforts them. Because you no longer need to be understood to be at peace. You no longer seek closure from those who cannot offer it. You no longer need to prove your heart, your mind, or your truth. You are unreachable not because you disappeared, but because you've evolved past the frequency where drama lives. There is a higher ground beyond noise, a place where you no longer need to argue, to defend, to explain. That is where your power resides now. You don't play the game, you stand above it. And from that stillness, you command more than you ever did through force. People feel it. Even in silence, they feel your shift. They sense the walls they once leaned on have disappeared, and they have to face themselves without the distraction of your reaction. Because when you are no longer reachable by manipulation, you become magnetic by mystery. The truth is, you never had to chase, you never had to prove, you never had to stay. The only thing you had to do was stop leaking your energy to those who didn't value it. Now every response is intentional. Every presence is earned. Every version of you that shows up is a choice, not a default. And this, right here, is the essence of energetic authority. You don't dominate with presence. You dominate with discernment. The moment you mastered emotional distance, you became untouchable. Not by building walls, but by becoming whole within. Because when you are full, you don't overextend. When you are whole, you don't over-explain. And when you are at peace, you don't overreact. This is the power of becoming unreachable. This is how the world begins to orbit you, not because you demand it, but because you no longer chase it. And those who once took you for granted, now they study your silence, not because you said anything, but because you finally stopped talking.